since the 90s when Dennis Sonny O'Neill was named as the shooter, based on the testimony of Jim Carney, and replacing the ricochet theory. Much speculation has gone on about who Dennis Sonny O'Neill really was. But the same thing is always written about him. He was formerly in the RIC, then the British Army, then joined the IRA. And one skill set is always ascribed to him, no matter what. Irish Central describes him as a marksman for the British Army in World War I. The Irish Times said that O'Neill was a trained marksman. The Independent says he was an expert marksman. And the Collins Society goes even further, saying sound logic and careful research points the blame clearly at the doorstep of Dennis Sonny O'Neill, the trained ex-British Army marksman and sniper. Geez, we get it, he was a marksman. But was he a marksman? We know in his early 20s, in 1910, Sonny O'Neill joins the RIC as a cavalryman, and 5 years later joins the South Irish Horse Regiment. So we know he's good with horses. In 1917, the South Irish Horse are dismounted and sent to fight in France. So Sonny gets to experience firsthand the horror of World War I. The brilliant Dennis Lenihan analysed Béal na Bláth up and down, and his work is essential. He says that in 1918, Sonny was wounded and made a prisoner of war. But presumably, he was taken prisoner around March 1918 during the Kaiserschlacht, the massive offensive the Germans launched, taking back a lot of lost ground. Conditions for prisoners in World War I was not good, and there was cruelty on both sides. Often prisoners had to do hard labour, and this may have been physically debilitating on Sonny O'Neill. He's presumably freed in August 1918 when the British Army retake all the ground they lost. And in October 1918, a month before the war's end, he's discharged as being unfit for military service for a terrible wound he's received to his right arm. For the rest of his life, Sonny will receive a wound pension from the British Army. It's presumed Sonny joins the IRA straight away when he gets home, but in fact, he reapplied to join the RIC, but was rejected on medical grounds, which means the wound had to be pretty serious. He does join the IRA in West Cork in December 1918, and his army experience is put to good use. Sean Hales appoints him a battalion musketry and drill instructor. So here's the first time we see a reference to Sonny being good with weapons, as a musketry instructor. Up to this point, it's just cavalry, and yet something bothered me about the term musketry instructor. It sounds very old-fashioned. Muskets? What is this, a Scarlet Pimpernel? And then I looked into it. A musketry instructor is an old-fashioned name for another job. Instructor of musketry was abolished in 1883 in Royal Irish regiments. The name was brought back, but what it really described was someone who is an assistant adjutant. They were junior officers who worked in battalion headquarters as staff officers with no role in directing what the modern army describes as skill at arms training. So we're right back to Sonny not knowing his way around a gun. He was a cavalryman who was good at doing administrative work. We see this at the start of the Civil War, where he runs a cavalry battalion for the anti-treaty forces and does other stuff, like rigging up a field kitchen. We know in the War of Independence he was working for Michael Collins, doing pure intelligence work, hanging out with old RIC and British Army colleagues to try and get a line on the IGO gang. He's supported in this years later by Joe Dolan, one of Collins' squad members who was in the armoured car at Béal na Bláth, and who in the 1930s has no problem backing up Sonny's claim for an IRA pension. So obviously Joe Dolan in the 1930s had no suspicion of Sonny O'Neill having killed Michael Collins. During the whole War of Independence, Sonny is never used as a sniper. If he's a great marksman and sniper, Collins would have used him. I can guarantee you. A few years ago, something incredible happened. A wealth of files pertaining to Sonny O'Neill's pension applications and intelligence reports on him were released in the military service pensions collection. Some people say this reinforced the idea that Sonny was the shooter, but I'm not so sure. One of the strangest things about the files on Sonny O'Neill is the intelligence files on him. These were exactly the kind of files that Desmond Fitzgerald ordered to be burned in 1932. Why did Sonny survive? Well, at this point, Sonny was a serial pension applicant. In the late 20s, he's trying to get a pension for his service in the IRA. The level of bureaucracy and the amount of back and forth is life-draining. Sonny fought harder for these pensions than he did in any war. During one application, his intelligence reports are forwarded by the guards to the Department of Defence, These were never sent back to the guards and filed away in a different system. That's why they survived. And because of them, you can see exactly why Desmond Fitzgerald wanted to burn everything. The amount of spying Irish people are doing on each other in the 1920s, I swear to God, it makes East Germany under the Stasi look like a libertarian paradise. The most amazing document comes from an Agent 145, who in 1924 does a profile on Dennis Sonny O'Neill. Height 5'8", a very stout build. Has a large scar on the back of his right forearm received in the European War when serving in the South Irish Horse as sergeant. A very downcast appearance, hardly ever smiles, never looks a person in the face when speaking. Age about 45 years. He was about 34. Carries a light bamboo cane in the left hand when walking. Hold on. He's got a very badly scarred right arm and he's walking with a bamboo cane in his left hand. Okay. Armed with a Peter the Painter, he is a first-class shot and a strict disciplinarian. So here's the first time we see any reference to Sonny O'Neill being a good shooter in a document that nobody sees until 2017. Agent 145 seems to know Sonny intimately. How would he know he was a strict disciplinarian if he wasn't in his company in a military capacity? In other words, Agent 145, who is reporting to the Free State, is an anti-treaty IRA member. Could this Agent 145 be the same guy decades later, feeding the Sonny O'Neill as Marksman story to all who will listen? Because there's no record whatsoever of Sonny O'Neill being a marksman or a sniper. As Karen Liebens has pointed out, he's never received training, never seen service as part of a sniper team, never had a record of confirmed kills in terms of headshots or long-distance shooting, never entered any competitions, which was a big deal at the time. People blab about his elephant gun and his dum-dum bullets, but they've never been found and never turned up. The only person we ever have telling us that Sonny O'Neill knew his way around a gun was some old guys in the 1970s and Agent 145 in 1924. But Agent 145 gave away a little bit too much in his description. Even if Sonny O'Neill was a phenomenal marksman, he has a badly damaged right arm that got him discharged from the army. He has a limp on his left leg that he needs a cane for, possibly gained while a prisoner of war. This guy is starting to look like Everett Sloane's creepy character in Orson Welles' The Lady from Shanghai. All he needs is an eye patch and he could be in a Monty Python sketch. You know, walking over with the limp and the bad arm and the eye patch, and some guy says, who are you? And he goes, I'm the sharpshooter. Give me a break. We're meant to believe that on a dull night in 1922, and with inferior equipment, Sonny O'Neill could get a perfect headshot at 450 feet away from Michael Collins. Even Lee Harvey Oswald's final shot on Kennedy was 265 feet away on a bright, clear day from a height, and he only hit him properly on his third go. Sonny, the untrained, as I shall now call him, was meant to get off a shot the length of the Grand Parade in Cork City that hit Collins perfectly behind the left ear and emerged on the right. Something's not right. In 1937, Sonny yet again applies for his IRA pension because Fianna Fáil are now in power. In his application, he mentions the battles he was at: Ballineen, Enniskeen, Bantry and Ballinablagh. He describes Ballinablagh. I had the horses there. We accidentally ran into the Ballinablagh thing, Tom Hales and myself. We heard about the party going through in the morning when they took a wrong turning and went into Newcastown. We went down to look at the position in Ballinablagh. We took up a position there and held it until late in the evening. Many people think this is the smoking gun. He was there. Well, yeah, everybody said he was there. The ambushers meeting in 1964 named him as one of the people who was there. But was he there when Collins was killed? Some people say he wasn't. And even his description is strange. We accidentally ran into the Ballinablagh thing, Tom Hales and myself. Tom Hales planned the ambush, unless Sonny is revealing a different truth to the one we were told all along. But we'll never know. One of the reasons why Sonny was such a convenient scapegoat for the death of Collins was that he died in 1950. His family complained to RTE after the Colin Connolly documentary named him, and their complaint was upheld, but it has stuck to him ever since. All I know is, if Sonny O'Neill really did make that shot in the state he was in, it's like he won the Euromillions twice in 1 week and married Benny, Bjorn and Pamela Anderson at the same time. Incidentally, Lieutenant Smith applied for a wound pension for his hand and his neck. He didn't get it. Many people have tried to calculate where you could put Sonny and the angles and the directions and where he had to be positioned for it to hit Colin's head, and Collins might have had to turn his head left and all that for it to hit the same way. But we can also simplify it right down. Is it possible Collins was just simply shot at close range, left to right, just like the famous shooting we saw on camera in Vietnam? Only if we exhumed Collins' remains could we find that out. Maybe we should.